Three, two, one.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. Hope you guys are having a great week, weekend so far. So I've got a quick review here for you guys for An American Pickle, which is written by, directed by Brandon Toast, who you would know he was in Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising, but he made his directorial debut with another Seth Rogen property, Future Man, which is the Hulu original show, which I haven't watched yet. I've heard it's good. I just haven't gotten around to it because, a million things to watch. And then the writer of this movie was actually Simon Rich, who is a screenwriter and executive producer from that show Man Seeking Woman, that old FX show, which starred Jay Baruchel. And then he actually is a executive producer and the creator of Miracle Workers, that show with Steve Buscemi and Daniel Radcliffe, which I have watched some of and really enjoyed. So, An American Pickle, it's a pretty simple premise. So Seth Rogen playing dual roles. He's playing Herschel Greenbaum, who is the character we start off with in the film. He is married to Sarah, and Sarah, of course, being his wife, he works. I can't remember. I'm actually blanking on how they met, and that's. It's very sweet. Okay, it's really interesting about this movie because it almost reminded me of Up. The first 10 minutes. Now, of course, she doesn't die from cancer, but as far as having that kind of tragic end to what is a very sweet story for Herschel, him growing up in this really small village, meeting Sarah, them talking about their hopes and dreams together. I found it really funny that Herschel, he's a ditch digger, and he's so enthralled by Sarah. He talks about how when he first sees her, that she has all of her teeth, top and bottom, and that in particular was very sweet, but had me laughing. And he meets her in the village and asks her, "Oh, do you come here often?" And she even goes, "No, food is expensive and I'm destitute." I was like, wow, okay. The thing about this movie is the premise. I remember seeing the trailer going, this premise is kind of insane. It does, of course, have kind of the, like I was going to say Jack and Jill. And it's similar in the premise from that aspect because, of course, with something like this, you're always kind of setting your watch going, okay, when are they going to have to switch places with each other? Which, of course, does happen in this. And I kind of want to do my best to stay away from spoilers, which I know is rare for the podcast, for this one simple reason. The reviews on this are very mixed. It's a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes as far as the reviews. The audience score is really shockingly low. It's like 46% out of 188 reviews. I personally fall more in line with the Rotten Tomatoes score. Also, I think the fact that this is on streaming, and obviously, we're not going to the theater really, but the fact that you can just watch this at home, I think lends itself better towards its grade. But I'll kind of get into that. So Herschel keeps talking about, what he loves about Sarah. He talks about, we have so much in common. My favorite color is black. Her favorite color is black. Both of our parents were killed by caustics. So you're like, oh my god. And they talk about building life together and becoming rich. Herschel asked her, how rich do you want to become? And Sarah goes, affording my own gravestone rich. And while that's very cryptic, I found it weirdly endearing. So Herschel has this job where he's smashing rats, in this pickle factory. I believe they say for every 10 rats he smashes, he gets like 5 cents or something like that. And so he ends up falling to a vat of pickle brine, which the scene where it happens, these rats all gang up, like pretty much converge together and go ahead and walk him near falling off the edge where he falls into to said pickle brine. And that scene in particular was very creepy because it was almost like watching Wilfred with how creepy the rats got. They're all hissing at him. I was like, wow, okay. So that takes us to the present day where Ben, also played by Seth Rogen, who is the great grandson, I believe, it's the great grandson of Herschel. And I think this is gonna kind of be. I know I've only talked about like the first 10-15 minutes. I think that's where a lot of the movie is either going to get you or it's going to turn you off, because you obviously have to buy into the premise, which is, admittedly kind of insane, but it's a whole fish out of water story. Herschel, when he meets Ben, it is actually very sweet. I actually went, oh wow, that's actually kind of impressive the way they pulled that out. You're going to either hate Herschel or be endeared to him. I was leaning more towards being endeared to him than hating him, but the whole crux of the movie is that Ben has created this app called Boop Bop, which they actually get into why it's called that, and I appreciate the fact that Herschel even asks him, why do you call it Boop Bop? And Ben's initial response is, well, it's because everyone's calling, that's like the in thing right now, is to have apps, cool apps with dumb names. I think he's like Uber or Tinder or whatever, and that was actually pretty funny because he's not wrong. That's kind of almost a trend right now. What's going to be interesting about this movie, or what is interesting about this, is how Ben is not even that slacker Seth Rogen character, because they do make a point. He's graduated from college. He's been working on this app for a while. It seems like he's more like a lot of people just kind of get in general. He has a good idea, but he's afraid to pull the trigger and actually get feedback on it. And Herschel is kind of that driving force of, look, I promised Sarah that our family would prosper, that our family would be great, that, we would be almost like what the Kennedys, or one of those type of families are. That's what I promised her, and you're getting in the way of that fucking promise. And Ben and Herschel's back and forth is very entertaining. Seth Rogen, I really don't think we give Seth Rogen enough credit for how good of an actor he is. I know we all think of, his stoner shit, but, he was a producer on that movie Blockers. I enjoyed the hell out of Blockers. I thought Blockers was great. He was a producer on Good Boys. I love Good Boys. This movie reminds me, and I like this other movie I'm going to reference more than I like this one, but it's very similar to something like Long Shot, where you get a very surprisingly layered performance from Seth Rogen, and it takes you back to something like Steve Jobs, where you go, oh yeah, like he's actually really fucking funny. Also, of course, A Disaster Artist was only 3 years ago. I mean, Seth Rogen can act, and he does turn in the better performance as Herschel, because the Herschel performance, that does have the more, I would say, dramatic beats, because he's having to be in this constant state of shock of what's around him, and the script does allow Seth Rogen to go ahead and flex a little bit in that instance. It's funny because of something that occurs that I won't spoil. Ben is kind of screwed as far as his app idea, and Herschel just kind of goes, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna go ahead and make this family, turn this family into a dynasty myself. And so, yes, it is a little far-fetched. He goes ahead and starts finding, cucumbers in like taking like the food that's being thrown out, and that's how he's making his pickles. And there's no health regulations or anything like that. It turns into a hipster trend, goes viral, and then it's about Ben's jealousy that something that he's been working on for 5 years, I believe they say in the film, is torpedoed, and Herschel's having this success. And there is definitely some commentary about how our world works now. they there's a point where Ben even brings up Twitter to Herschel, and Herschel goes, "Oh, I can Twitter better than anybody." And Ben even says, "Oh, Twitter is where the calmest people and the biggest and the brightest minds converge and share ideas." And I went, "Oh, if only that's what Twitter was." It's there are definitely some wink, wink, nudge, nudges and jabs at our current state of things, and there's a very obvious. There are a couple obvious Trump jokes in there. It doesn't beat you over the head with it, but it feels like Rogan is very clearly providing some commentary on Trump because he's not a fan of Trump. Shocking, I know. The movie itself, I think the first act works really well. I enjoy the second act. My biggest problem with this is that it didn't feel like the third act really knew where it wanted. It knew where it wanted to go. I feel like it didn't know how to get there though. The third act itself, it kind of wraps up in a way that's very quiet, which I'm not saying there's an issue with that. It's a little sloppy to get to the actual ending, though. And without spoiling things, once you watch the film, I think you'll understand what I mean. So that was really kind of my only disappointment in it. But Seth Rogen, the fact that he's playing dual roles and that Ben's character himself does get more complicated, and there are more layers to Ben than initially seem on the surface when you kind of start the film. So I have to give the movie some credit for that. And I appreciate the fact that Herschel, as insane as he's kind of being sometimes, he gets to deal with his own grief, which I appreciate that. I appreciate throughout the film. It's not even too long. It's a little unfocused at points, and the second act, especially as it kind of transitions into the third, it's a little sloppy how we get there. The film itself is funny, really all the way through. I laughed out loud a couple times actually. There's a whole thing with Herschel and seltzer water that I found really sweet and genuinely endearing. They showed it in the trailer, but the whole David Bowie joke is quite hilarious. But there are these very emotional beats at points. There's this point where Herschel, when he's first in Ben's apartment, he's going through a photo album and he sees pictures of Sarah and finds out that Sarah had a son, their son. And there are just these little pockets of genuine humanity that they use the fish out of water aspect for. I thought really well. I went, oh, okay, that's interesting. And Herschel's initial rise to fame is quite hilarious with how it's portrayed and how Herschel is almost is really constantly in the state of I don't know what's happening, and yet he's being successful. And seeing Ben, it's almost like that one episode of It's Always Sunny where the group was the gang group dates, and Dennis is losing his mind about not being a 5-star man. It's very similar to that, and I found that really funny. But this is one of those movies. It's only about 90 minutes, and again, the fact it's on streaming admittedly does help the grade, I think, for it. I think some people are just going to think you're going to get kind of a Seth Rogen stoner comedy, and this is a little more of a dramedy than a pure comedy. So if you're not expecting that, that might be a little jarring for you. Again, I think the last 25 minutes, it does meander a little bit, and it doesn't get to its conclusion as cleanly as I would have liked it to, but it's still a good film, and I really do like where it ends up. It is more of a quiet ending than some people might expect, but I actually enjoyed that. That's actually a positive I'd give the film. So I'm gonna give this, I'm actually kind of torn on this. I didn't like this as much as Palm Springs. I'm just gonna put that out there because I think some people would try to compare it to something like that. Both being films that I don't think overstay their welcome, but definitely have aspirations of being, I think, one of the best films of the year. This is not that. This is not Palm Springs on that level. But this is still a really solid Seth Rogen film, and it allows Rogen to get a little more dramatic because it's been a little while. Steve Jobs, which is one of my favorite Seth Rogen performances, where he played Woz, Steve Wozniak. Seth Rogen really does show again that he can act outside of just being the stoner loser, and even his character in present day really isn't that stoner loser. There's really no weed jokes or anything like that. It's a little more serious, and I think that might throw some people, but it's good. So I'm gonna give this a solid B. It's well worth your time. Like I said, it's just at around the 90-minute mark, so this isn't gonna waste your day or anything like that. But this is a good thing to put on. It's on HBO Max. I definitely recommend you check it out and really kind of figure out on your own. Do you fall more akin to, the audience score, or are you kind of more along the lines of the tomato meter? But I enjoyed this. Maybe something I watch again down the line, because again, I think it's something you can throw on and enjoy. The direction on this is really good, especially in the earlier time period with Herschel. I like the way that was actually all filmed. But yeah, it's a good movie, so solid B. But everybody, have you seen An American Pickle? Let us know what you thought in the comments below. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Nearman the First. And you can follow Colin on Twitter at The Real, that's REEL O'Neill. Find us on you can find us on Facebook. Go ahead and hit that like button at The Real Pineapple, and you can follow yours. You can't follow me on Twitter, but go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on SoundCloud, Apple and Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and TuneIn now at The Real Pineapple. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll have reviews up this upcoming week for the first season of Umbrella Academy. We'll have reviews up as well for the first season of Central Park. And we'll have a review up as well for The Old Guard. I want to go through and rewatch that before I review it, but I've got a lot to say about that movie. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support. Oh, and I'll have my thoughts on the Avengers beta, because I'm playing that once I'm done recording tonight, and going to kind of digest everything and go ahead and talk about that here this week. But thank you so much for your support, everyone. We love you all. Please stay safe out there, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.